not playing.
I don't know, mate.
The intro cue.
Let me just, the thing's not the thing. You know, the thing.
Should we sing? Should we sing? No more bullshit. No, okay.
No, you don't have to worry. I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. We are
Nobody
live.
wants to hear me sing anyway.
Not?
I want to hear you sing, Sis Boom.
That's what you think. When theoretically, you think you might want to hear it, but actually, I don't. I know you don't.
It goes badly. So we have Sis Phumi Mashiko here this morning on the show, as always on a Thursday, and we also have our new intern who you met briefly the other morning, Bakh'abantu. Here he is. He's in the studio in Joburg. He basically works for Simpiwe. That's his job at the moment, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm her slave. That other day I couldn't leave work because I hadn't completed a task. I got a tongue lashing.
What kind of boss is Simpiwe? Because she hasn't had a person working under her before. Now she does, and I'm wondering if she's a bit of a dictator.
No, I'm contractually obligated to say she's great. She's beautiful. She's the best person on earth. But like between me and you, nah. No, but she's great though. She's pretty awesome.
All right,
guys. Except I do want to know what is it with and at the risk of
just say it.
You young people.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Your young generation.
Why were you leaving work without completing the task? And what is the thought process behind that? You're not done what you're supposed to do, and like I'm leaving now. Like what the hell?
No, as a representative of my entire generation.
Yeah, now
I've seen it with
now
with
and now
my
here to apologize
and
to apologize on all of Generation Z's behalf. Here is Bakh'abantu. All right, so explain because Sis Phumi and I are old now, and we don't understand. How is it that you don't do the work that you're supposed to do?
No, you're not done.
Get off my property. Might as well say that also. No. Sis Phumi, never attribute malice to that can be easily explained by inadequacy or something like that. I think that's one like Hellon's razor. Yeah, that's Hellon's razor. But like, yeah, it's basically that. Like, no, man, we're just young and lazy.
You're not done. Like,
it's just laziness. It's like the other day, like she was like, "No, dude, you can't leave." I'm like, I'm just lazy. She was like, "No, you can't be." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, mom." I'm like, "Thanks, mom." I brought myself closer to myself. I was like, "Yeah, no, she's right." But yeah, no, it's just our generation is just what do you call it? ADHD up the wazoo. Like everything triggers us.
You know, I mean, it's kind of. I don't think it's a generational thing. I just think people are also working a lot smarter now, Pums, and in even before our day, let's just say long ago when people still used to do a 9-to-5 and they still used to stick to one job their whole lives long, you know, like that generation. So long ago, it was all about the hours that you clocked in for, and you were productive for the whole time, supposedly. Of course they weren't, but it was all about just ticking those boxes. And now, I mean, I was talking about this with Greg just the other day. You know, Greg kind of runs most of the operations and all the rest at Cliff Central. We couldn't do anything without him.
Greg
and he was
is
saying
actually
to me,
everyone's boss.
Absolutely. So Greg was saying to me, you know, that the time is arriving in the world now where you get paid to do a project. And this is where I understand your question to Bakh'abantu, and I don't think he's answered it well at all. So he's in shit with me now as well as with Simpiwe. But it's all about completing the task. So I don't care if you take 1 hour or if you take 10 hours to do it. I don't care if you need more resources or less resources, ask if you do. But as long as it is done and it is done really well, then you're good. If you finish with 2 hours to spare, then good for you. You can have as much time off as you want after that. If it's done, I'm happy.
But like, just leaving.
In my defense, the task was done in 5 minutes, and she was pretty proud. Like that's why I see. Like, I just needed to be reminded that, like, just like a good slap at the back of the head. Like, wake up.
So what happened? Was it like, oh, look, it's 5 o'clock. I have to go home now.
Yeah, no. I was like
a lab rat.
I was like, some people were like, no, like, can I rush somewhere? She's like, oh no, you're not done with your task. I'm like, okay, cool. Then I was like, and then I was like, nah, there you have it. She's like, there. Thought it wasn't hard. Barrett was in the corner, like cheerleading me on, so like that also helped.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So, all right. So how's it going over there? And what kind of things? Because people often ask me, can I be an intern? And we always say no, because we don't really need interns. But what are you doing at the moment that helps? I mean, I need to know what we're even, why are we keeping you around, Bakh'abantu? Justify your...
justify my existence. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Come on.
No, like, 2 words. Frostbitten penis. That headline was me.
Isn't that great? That was such a great story.
It was a great story.
Yeah, Phumi, if you don't know what this is, the Finnish speed skater or speed skier.
Oh yeah, I saw that story.
Cross-country skier. Cross-country, the Finnish cross-country skier said he got frostbite on his penis and it was extremely sore when he had to thaw it out at the end of the race. I was thinking, the the Olympics is meant to be this amazing thing where humans test themselves, but I don't know if that was in the contract. Throwing out your penis.
It was the second time it happened.
Exactly.
It was the second time it happened.
So I saw that story, but also because I've been kind of keeping a small eye on what's happening out there in Beijing after I read about all of the fake snow and how they keep the fake snow going. I was just like, I would have thought that the prerequisite for hosting the Winter Olympics is like you have you have the natural thing, you have the snow. But I suppose after Sochi, everybody can just host the Olympics.
Do you remember how badly Sochi hosted it? I mean, listen, between Sochi and Beijing, I mean, really, Russia and China are third world powers masquerading as first world powers. They may have, in China's case, a huge population and a massive amount of industrialization, and they may make all the things that we buy in the rest of the world. I give them that, right? And China is incredible in that it has brought many millions of people into a world where they're not in abject poverty in the last couple of years.
Out of poverty, 30 years,
yes, absolutely.
One generation.
That is incredible, and I will give them credit for that. But the fact is, you could see it with this Beijing Olympics. It just looked like a dystopian hell. This is Beijing. This is their capital, and it's gray, and it's shit, and it's dull, and their nuclear power plant's right next to the big ramp where they do most of the skiing. I mean, it's just, if that's what the future is, because people always go, China's the future. If that's the future, count me the hell out. I've seen a million places on Earth.
That operation with all of that fake snow and how they were packing it and the technology and the engineering and the ingenuity, I was just like, this alone should be like an Olympic gold. They should get an Olympic gold just for the setup alone.
Probably like in the background there was like child laborers working away, slaving away. But like China's a horrible place. Yeah.
It really is a horrible place. Like, I've never known more securely in my absolute heart and soul that I haven't wanted to go to a place more than after I watched those Olympics. If that was meant to be an ad for China, it did the opposite with me. It was like, whoa, stay the hell away from that place because it does not look like fun. And there are places in China, obviously, that are beautiful, and there are places that I still am intrigued
Like we would like to see the terracotta soldiers.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the tomb of the Emperor Qin, the first Qin emperor. The whole dynasty was named after him. And there's so much of that they haven't even touched yet. His actual tomb is under a mountain, a big mountain. It's a huge man-made mountain. And if you think the terracotta warriors are impressive, and they are, they reckon that the rest of the tomb, which is so far completely unexplored, and no one will get permission to be able to dig there, we're in for some absolutely incredible surprises once they eventually do open up and let people do that. And archaeologists will come in and do it properly so they don't ruin everything. But I mean, there are also parts of Western China, that are magnificent, just mountains and forests, and parts of it that have been declared natural reserves for certain animals. I mean, China's really, in the last 20 years, done an about turn on a bunch of things that we used to joke about China, kind of just industrialization at whatever price. but they're starting to look after parts of their natural, their sort of natural heritage.
But like it's something you said, Gareth. Like China has this broad spectrum of like from like abject poverty, like slums and like industrial, like next to this beautiful beauty, and like they can balance it. Okay, I don't know if it's a balance, but like they have the entire spectrum from poverty to absolute stunning beauty and whatnot to in like great technological revolutions and whatnot. But like they pretty have like the entire like spectrum of the world like just covered in that big continent, because you get people like in the villages like rice picking and whatnot, but like you also have like great big factories manufacturing iPhones for America.
Well, what you've also got to remember
So
what you got to sorry, I just want to throw this in quickly. What you have to remember about China too is the majority of their population are still agrarian peasants who live on small plots of land. Of course, because it's a socialized economy, they don't get to keep much of what they actually do. So they're subsistence farmers at best. And we also have to remember that the average income per person is still very, very low. There are all those empty buildings that they've put up, these cities that they've created artificially out of nothing. And of course, the big problem with China is that it's enormous, and they've got this population of mostly men now. They're not enough women for the men to marry because of their one-child policy. So a lot of the policies, and this is always the problem when you centralize power, and when you allow the government,
unintended consequences.
Absolutely, unintended consequences of social engineering, which is pretty much what they did. They socially engineered. They said, right, only one person per family, only one child per family. So obviously,
I also think that. Sorry, Gareth. I also think though that they made hard decisions. They made the hard decisions. They had realities to face, the kind of poverty they had, the starvation. I mean, and they'd already had mega starvation in the country. And they needed to do something drastic. It was a drastic thing. But they made a decision, and everybody kind of went with the decision.
Well, you don't have a choice. You say they went with the decision, but I mean, when last did you see a protest inside China? Oh, hang on, I remember Tiananmen Square, and what happened to those people? So it's not like you have much of an option in China.
I want to say that there's I want to say that it's on Amazon Prime, but it might be on something else. But it's definitely on one of the streaming channels. And it's a documentary about the one-child policy and how it has affected families. And the person who's the director is actually a Chinese person who's now moved to America. So all her parents, like she's first generation American, something like that. But her experience, and she goes back to the village, and this is the China you don't see, right? It's in the village, in the poverty, where they're still cooking on open fires like they do out in KZN. And just talking about what happened when the policy was introduced, and how the people were forced to stick to this policy. It's illuminating stuff.
It's also, again, you're kind of tooting their horn for things that most dictatorships can achieve, and they're basically emperor. I almost called it emperor. Xi Jinping. What's his name? Xi Jinping. Emperor Xi Jinping is. He pretty much makes the. He's been in charge there for a long time. He'll continue to be in charge for a long time. That's how it works in China. Some of their chairmen of the party, who are the presidents of the country, have done a better job than others. I mean, there's some who've been really smart. I feel desperately sorry for Taiwan at this point, because China is looking at the way that America has behaved in respect to Afghanistan under Joe Biden. It looks at the way that America has behaved with respect to Ukraine, as we see unfolding right now before our very eyes. And basically, the Chinese Communist Party look at this and going, you know what we can do with Taiwan? We can just pretty much hold a knife to their throat, and they're going to they're going to have to just be subsumed into China.
I think China calls it Taipei, Gareth. They don't recognize Taiwan.
Taipei is the capital city of Taiwan.
Cool.
They call it part of the
part of the
Chinese land,
the People's Republic.
So
But,
the live update on Al Jazeera.
Yes.
The live update on Al Jazeera now is military operation. Putin announces military operation in eastern Ukraine. Live news. So they're going in.
Right.
Yeah, like he declared, I saw that he declared like some of the states, like a big chunk of Ukraine, like independent. So he's going on the principle that he's not invading Ukraine, he's invading these independent states and he's keeping peace. I think that's what he's going with. He's keeping peace in these independent states that are broken off from the main part of Ukraine. Because Biden also addressed that. He's like, who is he to declare another country's land as like independent states? But yeah, he's Putin. He's Putin. He's Putin.
Well, Putin's not afraid of Biden. That's part of the problem. He hasn't got any weapons left. And the Democrats even had the temerity to say this week, I think it was a Senate Majority Leader who said, well, it was Adam Schiff. It was the guy who made up the whole Russian collusion hoax under Donald Trump. Remember that?
Yeah.
The guy who set himself up right outside of Congress and ran like his own media operation to tell everybody about the Russian hoax, how Donald Trump was being controlled by Vladimir Putin, which clearly was not the case because Vladimir Putin didn't do anything with the Ukraine while Donald Trump was in office. Do you know why? Because he was an unpredictable nutcase, Donald Trump. So Putin was like, well, let's just wait a little bit because there's bound to be that previous party, the Democrats, who let me do whatever I want. And that's actually what Obama said, as you may recall, on a hot mic moment when they had one of their summits. I think it was one of the UN summits, or it could have been the G, whatever it was, 8, 15, 20, God alone knows how many people are in the G group. It keeps growing and then shrinking and growing and shrinking. Anyway, Medvedev was sitting right there and Obama said, if you leave me alone until the next election, until I'm reelected, then you can do what you want in the Ukraine. And they took that for what it was. And as you know, they have no respect for Joe Biden, so they're going to do what they want. But Vladimir Putin's not worried about Joe Biden. Joe Biden isn't scary to anyone except young girls whose hair he's sniffing. He's a demented old man. The world, and I mean, everybody looks to the UN. They're like, oh, well, what about the UN? Are you joking? The UN is a big waste of money and time. Nobody takes the UN seriously. Countries like Russia are going to do whatever they want with or without the UN say so. Frankly, I think Putin's purpose here, Phumi, I'd love to hear what you think. Putin's purpose here is to undermine NATO. It's not really about the Ukraine.
So I'm looking for a quote. I'm busy looking for one of the tweets. The person to follow, guys, if you're looking for like anti-Putin kind of more than sentiment, right? The person to follow on Twitter is Gary Kasparov. Like, I know you may think he's just a chess guy, but he is also a politician. Yay! He's been going off on the past couple of days. And I saw a tweet from him yesterday, which I was just like, about what would have happened.
And
Gary
Kasparov hates Vladimir Putin, obviously.
Yay, in the worst way. But he was also talking about how would America have reacted to what Putin is doing had Trump been in power. And his view is that Trump would have just gone, Ukraine belongs to Russia anyway, send some arms to Putin.
No, but that's also wrong. Because Gary Kasparov, like so many people, it becomes about personality. He just doesn't like Donald Trump and he doesn't like Vladimir Putin. So he sees everything through that lens. Vladimir Putin didn't make any moves while Trump was president, whether Gary Kasparov likes it or not. The reason he didn't do that is because he wasn't sure whether, Donald Trump was the kind of guy who was so unpredictable that he would not only have imposed sanctions just willy-nilly, because he could have done that. We know how he behaved with respect to North Korea. He started tweeting.
So I think a year ago, we had a conversation about Putin, and I was sharing with you guys about reading the strategy document from the Russian head of military, and this was a document that was shared with some of the military academies about, I almost want to say 6 years ago now. Garismikov, you know what? Garismikov, Kasparov, I'll remember what his name is. But when I read that document, and I remember saying on the show here, that one thing that was extremely clear to me was that Putin and Russia has been playing a long game.
Yes.
And for them, the Cold War never really ended. They've been in a very long game. And America remains for them a big enemy.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
So
biggest existential threat.
And so what I see now, and funny, Madeleine Albright spoke about it, wrote an opinion piece about it that I read yesterday about Putin's address in a Security Council conference, so not meeting, but conference that was held in Munich in 2007. And the fact that in 2007 already, right, he laid out exactly how he feels, not just about the Ukraine, but about America and what he feels, the counter actions and the actions that and where he was going. So they've known that this is his plan. And that was in 2007. He was already telling them, you know.
You got to say, for Vladimir Putin, he's never hidden the ball. He's always been upfront about what he wanted, which in the world of politics, particularly American politics, they never say what they really think. And then when someone does, they're like horrified that this person could be so crass. Vladimir Putin has been upfront about what he wanted to do from the very get-go. He is keen to reunite the USSR the way that it was. He doesn't
Hence the name of his party.
Sure, he doesn't like all these breakaway republics that have been run badly by a bunch of what he considers to be tin pot dictators. And I mean, if you look at places like Tajikistan and Kazakhstan, they really are tin pot dictators. They don't just, tin pot dictators don't just come from our continent in South America. They come from Asia too. And this is all part of a very exciting chapter in geopolitics. And how lucky are we to be alive at this time to see it all unfold?
On the precipice of a war, Gareth.
Absolutely. Listen, everybody's overplaying this whole war thing. I do not think, I cannot imagine, and I'm willing to go on the record here, which so few people these days are, that they're going to be tanks rolling into Kiev and, Vladimir Putin marching in like Hitler saying, we've taken over Kiev and freed the Russians who were trapped here under this Western style and Western influenced place called Ukraine. It's finished now. It's not going to be that. It's going to be a slow, gradual thing. And as Phumi says, he's been playing the long game. He's no idiot. He's a strategist. That's where he comes from. And he's outplayed all the other countries, and they should be embarrassed.
Yeah, in the past 2 days, obviously because of everything that's going on, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos of old like Putin addresses and because you've got to see it to see where the man is thinking, which is how I saw this 2007 conference, which is on YouTube if you want to see it, which was in Munich. But also for me, watching last year's, because they have a V-Day parade, they have a Victory Day parade in Moscow.
Yes.
At the Red Square.
Yeah, same as they used to under Stalin, where they all stand on the balcony of Lenin's mausoleum, and the tanks and the missiles and all those things roll by. Yeah.
And they have all of the various factions of their military kind of standing and looking at 2021's Victory Day parade. I was just like, this nigga here. This
is flexing. This man is flexing.
Yeah, right.
You just hear those Russians and their kids. I mean, in some of the shots where they like close up on those soldiers, they have pimples. They're kids, as with all armies. But you just hear them shouting that "Hurrah!"
So who was it who said in the 90s and the early 2000s nationalism is dead? I want to find those people, and I think they're all still. They're all still in the UN because those people bullshitted us. They were wrong, and it is wrong
Google it
every way. Yeah, on every
Google
front.
it. It's on YouTube. 2021 Victory Day parade in Moscow, and it's huge. That Red Square is huge. I've been there. It's huge, and it is full of military. And it's just every kind, every single one of the infantry, so the pilot, and you're just like, whoa, this nigga here ain't fucking around.
Yeah, but like when he finally consolidates the USSR, the UN would act too late. I also see it. Like by the time Vlad is done, we would wake up to like a new
guys. Did you not see the headline yesterday? I mean, I even tweeted this. The headline that Naledi Pandor says that she's very happy to intervene in order to bring down the temperature between Ukraine and Russia. Now, our Minister of Foreign Affairs reckons that she can make a difference here. She's gonna call up Vlad or whatever she's gonna do. Use the hotline. And of course, Cyril, who we know is such an interventionist, he's going to, because he gets involved in things all the time that he's not meant to get involved in, like making presidential decisions. They're going to.
Guys, but did you see that story?
I'm so relieved.
That story was broken. But did you see that story and that headline was broken by IOL? I just want to point out to everyone. So take it with the pinch of.
So let me ask you something. Did IOL did one of these nuclear physicists, these brain surgeons at IOL, because we know that they've got the most educated people in the whole world working in their newsroom, right? Did they think that story was going to make South Africa look better, or make the ANC look better, or make Cyril or Naledi look better, or did they think it was going to make them look worse, and they did it anyway? Because that just proves these must be the stupidest. I just want to say that these guys must be some of the most slack-jawed, open-mouthed, mouth-breathing, dumb asses that have ever occupied what is called an inverted commas newsroom. And if journalism isn't horribly embarrassed across the board by the fact that these people also call themselves journalists, then you have to go back to the drawing board, guys. There is no way that IOL is unique in this respect. If your newsroom has an agenda and you're still pursuing this kind of shit, please understand your credibility with the average reader has hit rock bottom, and you kept on digging.
Did you see Fred Khumalo's open letter / kind of, hey man, because you remember he went and became the editor.
What did he say? Give us the précis.
What is Mercury? Is the Mercury, the IOL publication in KZN. And it was in the Daily Maverick last week, and he talks about kind of how at the start of it sounded like what Iqbal was putting together and building was credible and was alternative and was a place to be, as a journalist, for him as a Black journalist in South Africa at the time and all of what was happening. So he uprooted his family and he moved to KZN. And then he refused to publish something that Iqbal wanted him to publish. And then he just kind of overnight was relegated to the bottom of beyond. Sorry, guys, I'm just looking at something that's happening here at the office and wondering what's going wrong.
You must have got to the office very early this morning. I was just thinking about that.
I did.
Got busy day ahead of you, Pums. Lots of meetings.
A busy day. And his letter is amazing, guys. His letter is amazing. And what he says is, so I got it wrong. Because I didn't realize. So what was sold and what eventually became of IOL for a lot of journalists as well. Like Fred is a credible journalist. He's not, Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Got swindled.
But
they got swindled.
It takes a big man to admit that you were wrong too. And then we don't see enough of that in the media. The media, most editors, most journalists are loath to ever say we got it wrong. And there are plenty. We can look for the evidence ourselves. It's not like you can't find that. But I mean, good for Fred Khumalo. I've always liked him. I've always respected him. He's one of the few left. But most of the newsrooms in this country, if they dissolved overnight and the newspapers came out without any of that and just Twitter for headlines, we wouldn't even notice. Because that's mostly where they get their news. So, Bakh'abantu, I'm sorry, we kind of, Phumi and I spent the whole of the last half hour talking about Russia and China. And look, it is a big news story, but
and it's fun.
Yeah, and we wanted to have some fun.
It's the world. It's what's happening currently in the world now.
I know. I would have preferred it, though, if we could have buggered around for the first half hour, because we've got some serious headlines to look at this morning. Do you want to go through some of those quickly?
Cool.
So this is amazing. I don't know if you've seen this, Phumi. I know we were talking about the Tinder swindler the other day, but have you seen Inventing Anna?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody's basic.
So
That's my big takeout from.
This is like the biggest thing on Netflix at the moment. It's topped the ratings, and it's a story about this woman who basically swindled the whole of New York. She had all the hedge fund managers and the top financial institutions and, you know, the big powerful families in New York. This woman totally rolled over them with a combination of confidence and charm and just like the ability to lie with a straight face. She pulled the wool over their eyes, and they all gave her money. It is the most incredible story. You have to watch it.
I think they didn't all give her money. They all allowed her to mooch off them.
Oh, yeah.
For a very long
It's
time.
fake it till you make it.
And
Right.
she was completely fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And she was like this close to getting a big loan from a big bank, all based on hearsay
Connections and
who you know.
who
Look
you
who
know,
I've
like
been seen with.
networking. Yeah.
Literally all based on her Instagram, actually.
But like you say, Bakh'abantu, it's a fake it till you make it, like on the grandest scale. Like
Scale, yeah.
you could, and these are supposedly the smartest people, you know, New York financial sector. These are some of the hardest working, smartest people. They're the most connected, tech savvy. You couldn't possibly fool these guys. This girl came in and she just totally wiped the floor with these guys. It just proves you do not have to fear anything. If you have confidence, you could probably get anything you like. It's very, very interesting. So what a great story. And that is making the Netflix ratings at the moment. That's the top rated show on Netflix. So if you're wondering what everyone's watching, it's there.
And it was a very kind of mixed reaction when it landed, right? So a lot of people, remember I said to you guys that we over here are so far away from America. Actually, a lot of stuff doesn't make it across the sea, because the Anna Delvey story was a big story in New York. It was, when it broke, it was a big story. So all of those people and the trial over there have a lot more information of the real life drama as it played out. So a lot of people didn't like this, the way that it was portrayed by Netflix. But the rest of us all over the world are like finding it as a trip. That's why it's become, it's gone to the top of the ratings.
It sounds like fiction when you like first hear about it. It really sounds like it was like one of the best screenplays ever written, but like it's really happened.
Dude, I was at a lunch and the weekend after it came out, and I'd seen it, and a lot of people were talking about it. And when I was like, for me, the thing that blows my mind is how all of this is true. Yeah. There was a woman at the lunch who was like, no, it's not true. That story was made.
It sounds like
it was like done by the same lady that did Grey's Anatomy wrote the story. I'm like, yeah, based on the. And then I just thought, you know what, it doesn't have to end this way. She can just believe what she wants to believe.
Oh, you one of those, Sis Phumi. One of those, man. Take over.
Peace, Baba. Peace can prevail over everything. What do I get? What do I gain out of completely eviscerating this woman's like view of the world in that moment, simply because I know and she doesn't? There's no point. We're at a lunch, we're like drinking, having cocktails. Let her have her peace.
I can let this one go. I know, but it's the Inventing Anna thing is like really about like networking to a social thing, and it shows like the human mind and how like we put so much credence in like who, like not necessarily who we associate with. We still have those class systems like that are built in place. Like, no, Ubake has talked to Sis Phumi, so Ubake has to be a good person, or it has to be something like this.
It's who you hang around with that gives you your credibility. Yeah.
Especially in New York high society.
Especially in New York, like it's like old money system, like oligarchy vibes.
Don't you guys think we still do this? And we do it when we hear that someone has made a lot of money. We immediately give them a ton of credibility that they don't really deserve. Like there's still this thing in the world. Like look at Bill Gates, for example. Here's this guy who's basically, let's not, he's a software salesman. That's what he is. Sure, he's invented he was partly responsible for inventing Microsoft, and his contribution is not small. I'm just whittling it down to what he actually knows. This is a guy who knows software, and he's going around the world telling us how we must deal with the pandemic. Excuse me? Just because you're rich doesn't mean you get to tell everybody what to do in parts of their lives that are not affected by the thing that made you rich. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At this point, I wish I could jiggle like that, like that GIF from The Office with that chubby guy.
Right, the laughing
one. I wish I could jiggle like him. Right.
In South Africa, somebody who's got like money in the bank and with a couple of 100 million or whatever, the minute they talk, everybody goes, "Oh, we better listen because that's a millionaire or it's a billionaire." It doesn't mean that they're the best person to hear from in a situation that has.
Here in South Africa, we've learned that the hard way.
Oh yeah, because we've got a billionaire president. Right.
Yep,
I think we've learned it the hard way with our president.
Right.
But here we are.
Absolutely right. Phumi, in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about your old school, and we're going to get into something that they're up to, which is going to be very, very exciting. And we'll talk about that in just a little while. But one or two quick headlines before then. I always used to think that all this talk of these dangerous pedophiles and all the rest was a little overblown. But I'm starting to think that actually there is a lot of really dodgy stuff that goes on the internet, which, again, I'm grateful I'm not a parent, because to keep them safe from this stuff is going to take every bit of energy, and the parents are going to have to be that much more educated than the kids, which is an almost impossible task. But the metaverse, there's a metaverse app that's been launched now, one of them. There are a bunch of these. And according to researchers in the UK, there's this metaverse app that allows kids into virtual strip clubs. A researcher posing as a 13-year-old girl witnessed grooming, sexual material, racist insults, and a rape threat in the virtual reality world. The children's charity said it was shocked and angry at the findings. That's the NSPCC. The head of online child safety added that the investigation had found a toxic combination of risks. Apparently, the app that we're talking about here has a minimum age rating of 13. You could visit as a 13-year-old virtual reality rooms where avatars were simulating sex. They were shown sex toys and condoms approached by numerous adult men. And this is really gross. Obviously, a lot of people have said, this pedophile thing, it's not such a big... There are clearly some really dodgy, dirty, filthy people on the internet. And kids have to be watched like hawks when they go into things like the metaverse, because this is going to happen. Where do you think that these terrible people are going to be predating upon children? It's going to be online. It's not going to be in the real world. We used to worry. My parents used to tell me, don't talk to strangers. When you were a kid, don't stranger danger. I hear my nephews saying now as the new term. But they're not hanging around the schoolyard in an old Toyota Corolla anymore. They're online.
Yeah. Yeah, they're there, like masquerading as your best friend on an online game.
Yeah. What do you say? You're the parent.
I heard a podcast over the weekend about sites, also in the metaverse, but also in the current internet, that are suicide sites, right? That encourage people who are thinking of suicide and how to do it and what the best way or time and on the site, and lots of young people are on the site, and the people who did this podcast actually say that when they were doing their research, they found at least 45 people who, after having spent time on the site, actually committed suicide. And what they also do is they do what they call goodbye threats. So as you're, depending on the method that you're choosing, and one of their subjects, they spoke to the parent of a 17-year-old who'd spent time on the site about a month. From what they can tell, he spent about a month on and off at different times on the site, and then he committed suicide. And he also did a goodbye threat.
Oh my God.
And I was so blown away at the various things that one has to navigate as a parent with the child, because a 17-year-old is, guys, a 17-year-old is 3 years older than Gareth.
For me.
And so, you talk about navigating sexual predators, but you also have to navigate self-harm, because as a teenager, you have lots of time where you feel inadequate, or where you feel you could, everything is so amplified as a teenager. So you have a bad day, you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, it feels like the world is coming to an end. And we used to get over that anxiety pretty intact, because we didn't have all of these external factors.
And it didn't follow you home, Phumi. Like you would go home from school, and you would be with your family or your neighborhood, who were much more well known to you, and there were people around who would say to you, it's not a big deal. You'd see there's a world outside of school now, especially if you're a girl, because girls are far more susceptible to this kind of psychological bullying. Boys are more susceptible to the physical. And you see it following them home.
Sure.
And it's terrifying.
And I just and what I thought about if this, basically what this site does is it kind of gives you positive reinforcement of your negative feelings, right? So if you are, I would assume, like the 17-year-old, if you broke up with your girlfriend or boyfriend and you feel like there is no point in the world continuing, you're on the site and it just reaffirms all of that shit, and suddenly you commit suicide.
I think there's like what Gareth touched on, like it follows you home, like social media. I think there's like the ramifications of social media we're still about to see, like with the metaverse and whatnot. But like the stuff that happens on social media has given you like let's say if you were like a guy who was into Pokemon, for example, like, oh no, like social media is a great tool to meet other people. Like maybe you're the only kid in your school who likes a certain thing, so like, oh, now you get to meet a kid in America and whatnot. But now also those things can be exploited and abused. You get like psychopaths that can now all of a sudden, if I had like an impulse like killing myself, there's a community out there that's like relishes on this stuff, who also wants to do this. So it makes you not feel alone. It gives you that echo chamber.
I don't mean to be glib about this, because this is a whole subject for a whole lot more time. But I do want to throw in one other headline, because it's something that I was very sad to see yesterday, and I'm sure you all read about Ricky Rick, and it's related to what we're talking about now. This incredibly talented South African performer, a real solid human being too. I met him a couple of times, interviewed him in the studio. I was at an amazing New Year's party with him once, where we had the best time ever. He always struck me as being a really happy, balanced, incredibly talented, brilliant individual. Took his own life. The sad news broke yesterday, and I didn't know whether it was true or not, because you never know, right, with the internet. But when I later found out that it had been confirmed by his family and friends, this is very devastating. And I think for many of us, just another example. Double HP springs to mind.
Yeah, Double HP also, like the podcast you did with him. That was crushing.
I did this interview with Ricky, and we spoke for an hour and 45 minutes. And he's one of the most thoughtful. He was one of the most thoughtful, just gentle, deep souls. The guy was more than a performer. And if you spent even 5 minutes with him, you'd know what I was talking about. We've lost an incredible human being here, and it's deeply, deeply upsetting to me that this guy's no longer around. I'm very upset about this, and I don't know. Like, we've got to find a way of helping people out of these situations, because my God, we can't keep having headline after headline of these unbelievable people who are adding such value to our cultural tapestry.
So in 3 weeks,
themselves.
In 3 weeks, we had 3 big headlines of an artist passing. So we had, Patrick Shai, who had also committed suicide. We had Cooley Roberts, and now Ricky. So it's a lot, and related to how do you protect your kids, but also how we navigate the new world order, as it were. I think it's in kind of mental fortification, right? We've got to work harder at mentally fortifying ourselves and our kids, kind of learning how to recognize when you're at risk and feeling a particular way, having the coping mechanisms, having the strategies of what do you do if this, then that, if you feel this way, then you need to kind of behaviors. Because I just,
I don't know. It's a very, it leaves you feeling helpless, and I don't know what to say about that. So we'll leave it for a minute. I do want to get to something which I think is a lot more happy, upbeat, and exciting, and it has to do. I'm so happy we're doing this on a Thursday, Pums, because you have intimate knowledge of the Deutsche Schule and what they do at the German International School in Johannesburg. I've known them for a long time. I've been to the school, obviously, most famously for their beer fests, which are incredible, and I've missed them through COVID, but they have been producing, let me just tell you, they've been producing outstanding results, and they've been preparing their learners for the challenges of the real world for the longest time. You went there, makes it one of the oldest co-ed schools in Johannesburg. Absolutely, alumni right there. And this morning, I'm thrilled to be joined by Uta and by Leeto, who are both at the Deutsche Schule, and it's so lovely to have you here, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Phumi and I are thrilled to have you as part of our discussion today. And let's just talk a little bit about what you guys do and what the Deutsche Schule is doing. But Leeto, you are the head of English medium high school. And Uta, you're the head of department for German as a foreign language. So I've seen a few campaigns recently that are highlighting the fact that you don't need to speak German to attend the German school. A lot of people don't know that. Leeto, we can't, I don't know why you're not coming through. There we go. Hello, Leeto?
no.
Just unmute your mic on the screen there. No, on the screen, just unmute your mic and you should be fine. You should be good to go.
I should know. You've been online teaching for such a long time. How can I get that wrong?
No problem. We all make these mistakes. I've done it, so don't feel bad. So as I said, you don't have to speak German to go to the German school.
No. The thing is that we've actually got 3 entry points where you can come into the German school without speaking German. The one is that you can start with 18 months and join the little group, they call them the rainbow children, the Regenbogen kids, right at the bottom, and they learn German, and both parents don't speak German. The kids learn German without their parents. And then there's another entry point in grade 5, where all the subjects as well are all taught in English, and they have to take German as a language, but they really are bombarded with German in that stage because we're really encouraging, trying to get them through to the German stream. And then I head up the English medium high school stream. And that's a point, obviously, in South African system where in grade 8 you enter. And you don't have to speak German because all the kids come with no German, and they have all these subjects taught in English. And it's, I was just talking to one of my matrics, and they're from the English medium high school stream, and just saying how much they absolutely love the school, because they've come to a school where they've suddenly had to really think independently. They have got an opportunity to think critically. They have incredible facilities. I mean, we are sponsored by Germany. So here we are sponsored by Germany and have the best labs, I would say, in South Africa. And yet very affordable school fees because of the funding.
Pums?
Y'all, I was in the F2. I would probably say we were the guinea pigs because we were the second F2 class with Herman, and it's doable. And I always tell people that the person that I am, the international world view, the experience, I would never have had the experiences that I had in my life had it not been for that intervention. And my parents could never have afforded it because back then there were also quite a lot of, I had a scholarship, so I had an academic scholarship, which is how they brought us in grade 5. And the experience was magnificent. I was very glad. A friend of mine sent her daughter to the English medium high school. She matriculated 3 years ago, I think. And I was very glad to hear that there is now a dual medium as well, because it was very hard for us back in those days. I matriculated in 97. It was very hard because we were all alone outside of the school environment. We did not have any help from our parents, just not in terms of the language, not in terms of the schoolwork. It was difficult, but it's doable, y'all. If I could do it, trust me.
I do like the way Phumi found a way to just drop in there that she had a scholarship because she was so clever. I mean,
But if she could do it.
nice humble brag. No, that's very good.
The thing is that a lot of kids say that they were exposed. They come here and it's like a different world because it's like a real little Germany, a little international oasis that you experience, and that you get ready to actually to go to places like Europe, and you get exchange programs and things like that as well happening.
So on that note, Uta, maybe you can just tell us, because obviously learning the German language will open a whole lot of doors for you. It is a major international language. When you finish matric, if you can say you speak German at a certain level of proficiency, it gives you an enormous range of jobs. We know we have many German companies in South Africa. All over the world, there are German companies. There are also German communities all over the world. And if you can do this, you're just increasing your chances of being made useful in the world, of being able to be as versatile as possible. Isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we have at the German school that is fairly unique to us is that we do an international language exam. Not only do our students write the IEB matric exam at the end, they also get to do what was earlier called the F-Zweig. It would be in grade 9 and then in grade 11, and the English medium high school will do this exam in grade 11. When you get this, it's actually called the Deutsche Sprachdiplom. I don't know if Phumi actually did it earlier, but if you have that, you did it.
Grade 9.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So you know what I'm talking about. So that exam actually opens the doors for you. If you have your level 1 exam, you'll already get preference getting into jobs in all the German-based companies in South Africa, or I suppose anywhere in the world, because if you speak German, that's already a bonus. And then if you get the second level exam, it actually opens the door for you to study in Germany at a German university. For whichever town you want to go to, there's various places where you can then go, and even if you don't get it on the highest level, you can still go and just do a gap year, a bridge year, where you catch up on the German language in Germany, and then you get to study there and hopefully work there.
And do you still have Abitur, which is like A levels for?
Yes,
you know.
Yes. Okay, so this is the two options we have. The people from the F-Zweig, which we now call Isaac, can actually change over in grade 9 into the combis. They do the Abitur exams as well as NSC exams, so they've got a dual qualification, and they automatically then can study in Germany. And then we have the English medium high school, that is just the NSC, who will then still be able to do the international exam and still study in Germany. But another thing that we have, which is really special, is our student exchange program, because one of the most important things to learning a language is also to learn the culture and to interact with people in Germany. And in our grade 9 class, and part out of the English medium high school, it's in the grade 10 class, we're actually sending kids over to Wangen in Bavaria for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So they get to actually experience Germany.
Well, I must tell you that whatever your Deutsche Schule did, Phumi was an invaluable travel companion when she and I were in Berlin together.
Awesome.
5 years. And Phumi was busy speaking German fluently. I don't think you have for years, Phums, but it all came back to you in one big fell swoop. And it was quite wonderful to see, because obviously, you know, that international stuff that Phumi's talking about, the ability to kind of to feel worldly is something that many South Africans don't necessarily get from an early age. And it would be valuable for people to know this. I just love the fact that, and really, I'm going to plead ignorance. I did not know that if you couldn't speak German, you could go to Deutsche Schule. So this is very helpful information. But just tell us, because we are running out of time, if a parent is listening to this now, and we have many parents who listen to us every morning, and they want to find out more, I want to speak to you perhaps about what precisely the different programs are and how it all works. How can they get more information? Is there somewhere they can go?
the most amazing thing is on the 5th of March, which is on Saturday, we have this incredible open day, and that they can come to the school and see it for themselves. So they can actually come and speak to the teachers face to face. You have to book. So you have to go onto the website. The Deutsche Schule is DSJ. So you just Google DSJ and you can book for that. It's from 9 to 12 and you can come and speak to us. If that is not possible, then obviously on the website, there is also virtual tours of the school. There's videos to information. You can book a private tour on a different day. So we're all willing to come and see our school for yourselves.
Fantastic. And so you can actually come with your kids and see the place yourself.
Absolutely.
Meeting people.
The kids must buy in. The kids must want to be here. And that's very important.
Well, all right. Phumi, any parting
Last
words?
brag.
Yeah.
Last brag. If you look at their top 10 performers from last year, you will see a very diversified individual. So black girls, no, I didn't see a black boy, but German girls, German boys.
Yes, actually.
So,
definitely a little 92% math star. No, please don't leave him out.
I remember seeing him, but I do remember, like, I remember seeing the badge and scrolls, and I was just like, yeah, these kids are those kids. But definitely their top 10 performers will show you that it's even if you're in the English stream, you're still getting the same and one of the best educations in the country.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, go for it, Uta.
Actually, the head boy last year was out of the English medium high school, and and another boy was also, and both of them did the DSD2 exam, and they got it on the highest level, and also English medium high school. So English medium high school has a full chance of integrating completely and fully benefiting from everything we do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and of course, in South Africa, we have a huge German community too, and it would be useful for people to kind of be able to speak that language. You know, it's one of the most beautiful languages, I think, and Germany itself is such an incredible country. But here in South Africa, we have so much of that going on. Deutsche Schule could be your link to all of it and to a world that
it's
you.
also
that you
one of the oldest schools in Joburg. It's over 100 years old. That's how long we had German community in South Africa.
Well, I will see you all. I'm not enrolling in high school. I'm a little bit too old for that. But I will be seeing you at the next beer fest. I can't wait for that. Thank you.
Next year.
Next year. Absolutely. I'll be there. All right. Thanks so much. Uta, what a pleasure to have you on. And thank you so much, Leeto. Very lovely to have you both. And we will speak to you again soon, I'm sure. So there we go. Pums, your old school. And they're letting people know that they're open.
Dankeschön, Gareth, for such a lovely trip down memory lane.
Beautiful.
No, you don't say Auf Wiedersehen when a person says Dankeschön. You say bitte.
Bitte, yeah. Oh, okay, you see, you're teaching me. Let's take it baby steps, all right? I haven't been in Berlin with you for a couple of years now.
You say plezier in Afrikaans.
All right. Well, I've got some really good news for people who are fans of the Burning Platform, and especially people who are fans of Leeto, Nthoba, who's been a guest on the show many times. And whenever he comes on, people just love to hear from him. We'll also be joined by a return champion, Anthea Gardner, to talk a little bit about the budget speech, which happened yesterday. So if you weren't paying attention, don't worry. Anthea's got some really interesting stuff when it comes to the budget speech. Also, Leeto's always got plenty to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Thabo Mbeki and what he's up to. The budget speech, obviously, is something he wants to cover. And this whole idea of white guilt, black historic pain, white fear. We've got to get into the politics of that because it's being exploited by the politicians, and we all need to be on top of it so we know what's coming. Loads of good stuff on the Burning Platform next. Bakh'abantu will have you back on shortly, and promise we won't talk about Russia and China the whole time.
I don't mind it. Are you going to play Anthea's theme?
Oh, we have to sing it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, God, sing. Get with the singing.
Absolutely. Phumi's not going to sing. She said she'll chase people away, so we won't take the risk. All right, coming up, all of that and more.
Up next in the Autotrader podcast.
Oh, I think just the fact that it's electric compared to the ICE cars that we're so used to. It's a totally different car, different engineering. Driving a battery car, it's so different. You get instantaneous power, and You get a lot of power. It's very quick off the mark. So I think you have to experience it, because you can hear about it, you can read about it until you drive it. Until you get that smile on your face. It's
and literally, you haven't stopped smiling since you walked in.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Yo, I put it like wow, this that sound. These oaks don't work hard like me, I hope they know by now.
cliffcentral.com on a very beautiful Thursday morning, and we are looking at just after 7 o'clock. We've got the Burning Platform. This is your chance to catch up on all the big events of the week and to make sure that you know what's going on in the news. We've got two great guests on with us this morning. Of course, Phumi Mashiko is here as usual to make sense of a very crazy world. We already spent a good half hour earlier talking about Russia.
I'm glad we did, because we don't have time to speak about Russia in the Burning Platform. Yeah.
But who knows? We may even have more of that in the next hour or so. We'll see how it goes, because I'm sure that our guests have something to say about that too. But before
there's a space happening right now on Twitter with 18,000 people talking about this Ukrainian invasion. Like it's happening live. It's like shock and awe. It reminds me.
And
of
you know
shock
what's
and
so
awe.
funny is that 18,000 people is but a fraction of the number of troops that Vladimir Putin has arrayed on the borders of the Ukraine, and some of them already entering in. So you know what? That little 18,000 chat group on Twitter, you guys, you wouldn't make up a percentage of the military might that is being shown off by Russia at the moment. All right, but we have domestic issues, so maybe we should start with those and welcome our guests, and then we'll get to all of this, right, Pums?
Yeah, boy.
All right. So first up, he is a returning champion here, and I always say that because you're a very popular guest here, Leeto. When you join us, people are like, "Oh God, he's going to depress us, but he's going to tell us the truth." So we'll have to. Good morning. It's nice to see you.
Good morning, Gareth. Good morning, Phumi.
Hello.
Try not to upset everyone too much this morning, Leeto. Leeto Nthoba is, of course, a lecturer at Central University of Technology, a debater, socio-political analyst, and this morning he's got lots of things on the agenda, which we'll get to in a moment. But also, I'm thrilled to have Anthea Gardner. Hello, Anthea. How are you?
Good morning, Gareth. Morning, Phumi. Good to be back.
Hello.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. So people wouldn't let me get away with not playing your theme music. So here it is, just to please the people. I mean, really, Anthea, you can't
give the people what they want.
You
I
can't go
agree.
anywhere without your theme music playing, right?
Yeah, if it's not here, it's on restaurants.
Right. Basically, Anthea walks to her table at a restaurant and people start singing. She works hard for the money. So there it is. All right, Anthea Gardner, nice to see you too. We've obviously, guys, got to start with the budget because yesterday our Minister of Finance tabled his budget. And there are some headlines that we need to take from that, things that actually affect our bottom line. So, Anthea, do you want to start us off and give us a little précis of what was tabled at Parliament yesterday?
Sure.
Or
so
not at Parliament, Cape Town City Hall, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of an overview. I think everyone wanted a piece of this budget as usual. And the finance minister, in his inaugural speech yesterday, did well to keep everyone happy, I think, mostly. The good news, let's start there first. We had 182 billion rand revenue overrun from the commodity boom. So thank you to the mining companies. But I must point out that the finance minister was acutely aware that this was a tailwind that wasn't going to last forever. You know, we've had super high commodity prices and we've taken advantage of it. So well done, you know, to everyone. And then everyone's talking about this corporate tax rate that was dropped from 28 to 27%. And the idea that it's not government's job to create employment. And so two things out of that. It is government's job to create a good working environment to help economic growth. So definitely a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, though, that 1% drop in the corporate income tax rate actually still means that we're 5 percentage points higher than the OECD average. You know, so it's still not great to do business in South Africa. And there's a whole lot of structural issues that we need to face. And the finance minister is very much aware.
Let me just interrupt on this one. Sorry. Is this purely cosmetic? Is this like almost to extend an olive branch? Or because it doesn't look like it makes a huge difference to anybody, 1 percentage point drop in the corporate tax rate. And I know that all the communists and all the quasi-communists in Parliament are going to moan and balk at this idea, like, no, we've got to drain every cent of tax we can out of the business community. But this isn't helping business, and frankly, it's not placating them. So what is it doing?
Gareth, I don't think you can move from 28% to 20% in a heartbeat. So it's a step in the right direction. You're right, it does very little. But I think, and kind of I've heard quite a few businessmen speak on this, people are appreciative of it.
All right.
I heard Vusi yesterday on a Mail and Guardian space, also talking about that. And I suppose it's consistent with what the president said, you know, to say that private sector is what's going to create jobs and it's not going to be government, you know. So then it's consistent because then you want to alleviate some of the pressure on the private sector. Although a couple of pages down the speech, he then says they're putting aside how many billions for the development of jobs for young people?
I think that was 7.6 billion rand, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember correctly. Yeah, and then of course, you know, as individuals, we get a 5 billion rand, just over 5 billion rand tax relief, which seems fairly arbitrary as well to me, especially when you consider that he mentioned that South Africa now pays grants to more than 46% of the population.
Oh,
that is, and this with a shrinking taxpayer pool. That is just completely unsustainable.
46% of our population is receiving grants because they are either unemployed or because they have extenuating circumstances. Oh my God.
So let me put the unemployment.
Most of those people, by the way, most of those people live in Leeto's neighborhood.
Let's put this context to the unemployment number. The unemployed people in South Africa are equal to the entire populations of Luxembourg, Zimbabwe, and I think Malawi, right? Entire population, man, woman, and child of 3 countries is the number of unemployed people we have in South Africa.
Yeah, so basically, if you take all the unemployed people and take them into Botswana or Namibia, we'll win the country. We can invade them and take their country over and then leave the unemployed people there. But also, I think the 7 billion rand for
Don't be
when they
rude.
say for the development of jobs for young people, I think that for me is the most insulting part. That's the slap in the face, right? Because you know what that development for work for young people is? It's these people who had taken over positions like sanitizers, like people were getting paid. Like that's how desperate the job situation is. They hired people to stand at the gate at high schools and primary schools to sanitize the kids' hands, right? And those people, apparently their jobs are going to be extended. So you're basically going to be standing at the gate now. So let's assume that the sanitizer isn't needed anymore because we're about to beat COVID. So what's going to happen then? And I think it's really insulting to say that's for the development of jobs for young people.
Also,
it's to placate young people.
Maybe you know the answer to this, but Anthea, perhaps you also do. Where is that money going to go? Is it going to go to the NYDA or something? Because you remember what a disaster they are. Yeah, you remember the National Youth Development Agency. I mean, what a waste of money that has been over the years.
It's going to go where, Gareth?
Gareth, I don't know if I agree with you on the Yes for Youth program. I know quite a few private companies that have employed a number of interns or youngsters who have been unemployed. So the average, the minimum that they pay interns is 4,000 Rand a month, which is not a lot. But then corporates can increase or subsidize or kind of the salary if they want to. And I know it hasn't created the 4 million jobs for youth that the president spoke about at the launch of the organization, or whatever you want to call it, the program. But I think it has. I've seen certainly that it has created a couple of jobs.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Anthea. And Yes for Youth is a great program when you think about it, right? In conception, it's a great conceptual program. But if you don't get the jobs where people need it, if you're gonna have the jobs where the companies are, it means the people who are going to benefit from that is the people or the young people who are in Johannesburg or in Cape Town. So if you're in a small rural town somewhere, you're still out of luck when you want to get a job, right? But I think the biggest issue is the jobs that government is targeting to create now. They want to slowly abandon Yes for Youth because they want us to forget about it. And what they want to do is to placate young people in small towns and give them these jobs where there aren't even jobs, right? They're paying them to stand at the gate to see if the kids arrive, to lock the gate at the school. It's not even a security job. If you call them security guards, it would have been something else. But it's like these nondescript jobs that just try to give them money in order for them not to get the 350 grant that they used to get.
So
you know what I call it? Recycling poverty. It's recycling poverty. It simply is keeping people just out of the poverty, but not enough to get out of it. So it's just a recycling of this poverty. You're spending all of your time to work at this menial job so that you get this minimum wage and are unable to spend any more time either bettering yourself or studying something else, or and you're unable to spend that money that you're getting to move into like the
Corona's boring. In the comments, Corona's boring has already shown what we may be heading towards: the hand sanitizer workers union that is probably the most likely offshoot of what's going on here. Koketsa says, though, and this is a depressing reality, South Africa is now a welfare state in every possible interpretation of that word. And we shouldn't be proud of this. Government almost goes out there and says every time anyone asks, oh, no, but we're providing welfare for all these people. No one wants to. No one in the world wants to be on welfare if they could possibly do better. No one on earth wants that. For government to think that that's an acceptable thing to be trumpeting around is very, very depressing.
But speaking of welfare, the SOEs get more welfare too, hey, Anthea.
Oh, the electricity elephant in the room, right? I mean, so he managed to avoid that, I think, quite succinctly, really. I don't even know where to start. He kind of spoke about tough love on SOEs and, we can ill afford bailouts, I think were his words. But then by the same token, we don't really have a choice. I mean, and the question here about Eskom is really whether government takes all that debt onto their balance sheet or leaves it on Eskom's balance sheet. And the only reason, in my view, for taking it onto the government's balance sheet is because government can raise debt cheaper than Eskom can do it. Other than that, I mean, and then, of course, you have to look at the fact that total government debt is already over 4 trillion rand. I mean, this is a country paralyzed by debt, paralyzed by non-functioning SOEs. And I think, you know, not to harp on the unemployment thing, but if we just resolved some of these issues and fixed some of the kind of non-performing assets that government holds, that would create jobs, actually, and solve a major problem in our country.
Well, Leeto, I know you've got some points of view on the overall budget. Do you want to throw in what you have to say here? Because Anthea is very polite about this, and she's good at this because she analyzes the macro. But I think people like you and Phumi and I pick apart the minute details of this, and we find things we like and we find things we don't like. But what is your overall feeling about the budget?
You know, the overall feeling is that, for me, is that, yes, the ANC did what they needed to do, for one, with the companies and the corporate side, because they now going to accede to the fact that these people need to make jobs, that the government is really, really crap at making jobs. But also, the way in which they make jobs, they can't distribute those jobs to people equitably. So even if the government makes jobs, somebody's cousin or uncle is going to take that job, right? But I think the bad part was, it is sort of a backtrack for poor people. So if you're poor in this country and you listen to that budget speech, there was nothing for you in that speech, right? Even if they're saying they're raising grants, they're doing all of these things, the efforts that the government is making to alleviate poverty, and I'm not saying there's no social grant that will alleviate poverty. If you give them 350 Rand or 1,500 Rand, you're not alleviating my poverty. I mean, a clear roadmap financially of getting people from poor to at least surviving. There's nothing of that sort in that document. So if you're living in a small town, if you're in Welkom, if you're in Wolmaranstad, you're basically for the next foreseeable future, like let's say for the next year, you must just take your poverty and eat the pap with it.
Yeah, I mean that's true. And again, it's become like a you're watching a really bad play where, you know, the ANC panders to poor people, but they do nothing for them. They're like, we're here for you, but we're not going to do anything for you, so forget about it. And there's really nothing in the budget for the unemployed. There's never anything in the budget for the unemployed. There's never anything in policy making for the unemployed. So Anthea, what do you think the prospects for business are, besides this 1% cut in corporate tax? Are there any other reasons for business to be optimistic about the budget?
I'm afraid I don't really think so. What was weird was that the finance minister said for the first time, and I think it was like 12 years in a budget speech, that they're expecting lower GDP growth in the next, you know how they always predict it for the next 3 years. For the next 3 years, they're expecting GDP growth to be on average 1.8%, which is lower, much lower than where it is at the moment. So I don't know, is that maybe a turnaround? Because they've always predicted higher GDP growth and then always got it wrong. So now maybe if they're predicting lower GDP growth, if they get it wrong, we'll see higher GDP growth, which is really the only way to fix the problems in our country. I mean, even kind of promising not to increase public servants' wages, I'm not sure that's correct. You know, there are lots of teachers and nurses who have to get paid through that purse. And they're doing great jobs, and we need to keep them happy to keep working and doing their best at it. But we do worry about that public servant wage bill, don't we? Mm-hmm. So positive, tough one, Gareth. Wow, I'm trying to rack my brain.
Yeah, I know Leeto's not going to give us any positivity, so I was hoping you would. Yeah.
You know what? he didn't talk about, which for me was quite a marked kind of thing to look at. Before he talked about the kind of lifelines that they are still going to give to the SOEs, I had hoped that he would, even as a 3-sentence passing mention, give us a little bit of a report back on the progress that has been made by that task team the president put together that was going to like look at the SOEs in 2020 already, right? Anthea, is that you? Just a passing mention, guys. Just that task team we started in 2020. This is the progress they've made, and because of what they are telling us, this is how we're dealing with SOEs. Nothing. Crickets.
Phumi, you're spot on. There were so many missed talking points in this budget speech. It was quite scary, actually, that he didn't mention half the things that we thought he would.
He's new to the job. I mean, give him a chance.
Even as he's new to the job, you could have given those 23 pages could have been delivered by Tito Mboweni and his pilchards. There's absolutely nothing in those 23 pages of speech that say this is a new minister, there is fresh thinking, there's a new there's a new perspective, it's bloody hell.
But I think Phumi is more hopeful than all of us, actually. If you ever hear the term task team, inquiry, war room, special imbizo, if you hear all those 4 words, know that the government is saying we're about to relax and do nothing.
No, but Leeto, it's important because we have a president who has a propensity of creating parallel structures that he brings into his presidency that are supposedly going to make a difference, alleviate something. Wasn't he just talking about a chief like red tape cutter last week when he gave his speech? So, and what's a worry and something that we must look at and keep an eye out for is those task teams. If we don't get feedback on them, it means one of 2 things. Either they did give a report because those task teams and those parallel structures are only accountable to the president, right? They are not part of they're not going to be standing next to a parliamentary committee giving feedback or being hauled over the coals. They are only accountable to the president. So it either means they did give him a report and he didn't like what the report had to say. We will never know. Or they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there and there are no reports coming out of there. And we're not going to know. They are all accountable to the president. Your president is learning to become a dictator. That's all I'm saying to you. Especially after what Thabo Mbeki said when he was out there in the Free State.
Yeah, tell us about what Thabo Mbeki said there quickly, Leeto, because I know that he's been doing this conference tour around the country, and he spelt out the catch-22 of the ANC's demise. Just explain what that actually means.
Yeah, right. So here's the problem. The ANC is talking about renewal under Cyril, right? Everyone is saying renewal. We are ready for a new ANC. Now, there's a really big problem because the problem was initially created by the NEC, especially Gwede Mantashe, right? Gwede was the one who started disbanding branches. And so now what the ANC is left with is ghost branches for the most part. So if you hear somebody's been elected to the ANC provincial structure in Northwest Free State, the Northern Cape, you must know that person elected themselves. They're just getting people on buses who aren't even ANC members to just go raise hands, right? So here's the problem. So the ANC operates from this down-facing triangle structure. The power of the party, where it's centered around the branches. The more branches they have, the more powerful they are as an NEC. So the NEC is actually just the affirmation of power. So the NEC now acknowledges that they are an orphan structure. They say that the branches are weak and there's nothing that we can do, so we need to renew. Now, Thabo Mbeki comes out and spells out and says, we need to audit all the branches on branch level because ghost branches are actually giving us the result of poor leadership, right? And then they say, we also put the responsibility of renewal on the branches. So the branches must tell us what renewal looks like, what a new ANC is, what the leadership looks like, and where the focus is. And so it's like you saying, I'm an orphan, I'm an orphan structure. My parents are dead, but my parents need to tell me what I need to be in the future. You understand? And so now it shows you that the ANC is dead. And for the most part, at this branch level, everyone is in it for their benefit. I want to be a counselor. I want to have a job. I want to be deployed. And so nobody's trying to build the ANC for the ANC's sake. People are trying to build an ANC to alleviate my poverty state. And so now, how am I going? If I can't innovate my way out of poverty, how do you expect me to innovate a party out of redundancy, right? And so,
well, I mean, can I just say that even the symbolism of trotting out a former president, the only one who's still alive, and asking him to go out to renew, that tells you the whole story. I mean, this is the guy who should be enjoying his retirement. Can you imagine how much persuasion was involved in saying to Thabo, listen, if you don't get out there, the whole ANC's dead. And he's like, oh. I mean,
okay, at the risk of like,
if you didn't want to take a break from his whiskey, he was quite happy. Thank you very much.
at the risk, I have said this before, so I'm going to preface my comment with a disclaimer. And my disclaimer is, I love Thabo Mbeki. I disagree with a lot of things policies, not a lot, some of the policies. And I've done work for the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. So there is my disclaimer on before I say what I'm going to say.
Up front, go ahead.
I think the kind of trotting out of Thabo Mbeki, right, is just yet a slow death. The giant is falling, and there is nothing that they can do about it. And they are hoping that trotting out Thabo Mbeki will prop up the people that are there, and he will lend his name and credibility back to the people who have lost it for the ANC. However, when he comes out and perpetuates this fallacy that without the ANC, the country is lost, I call bullshit, right? Of course, this country will continue without the ANC. In fact, this country must continue without the ANC. The truth of the matter is that the ANC's failure in the coming polls has been spelled out not by their own inadequacy, but by history of the movements, of liberation movements around the world, in Israel, in South America, and Africa is littered with that history. 20 to 30 years, right? They knew that history and they had an opportunity to change that for South Africa, and they haven't. They've gone down the trajectory of what every other liberating party has done, and their time is over.
To defend Thabo, though, just for a little bit, he has to say that. You have to stand in front of your people and say, comrades were important.
No.
The world needs us. If you don't say that, these parasites that are tearing the ANC apart right now will just keep going. And so if you try to redirect them in a positive way, that's just Thabo Mbeki trying his best to redirect the parasites and the tenderpreneurs to something more positive.
Unfortunately for Thabo, he is in this situation that the Bapedi call Homuya Mushate. He is, what would be the English? So he's catch-22. That's guys, you must know I'm angry when I'm now only speaking in the vernacular. My head is not computing in the English anymore.
Yeah.
He is, because Thabo Mbeki should have actually, and Thabo Mbeki must take some of the blame for what has happened to the ANC, because he was one of the people that brought weak people around him who have grown to become because he needed that power, because he wanted to be the cleverest person in the room. And unfortunately, when you bring in weak people around you, you are left with what? A weak party when you are gone. He should have stayed home with his whiskey.
Well, I mean, he screwed up even while he was president by thinking that he was smarter than the coalition of the disenchanted that gathered around him and eventually ousted him from power, as you may recall. I mean, there were some of us, I'll admit, I was more of a Thabo Mbeki fan then than I knew, but I was quite excited about what the novelty of what Jacob Zuma was bringing would be.
I remember a debate, Gareth.
Right.
I remember a debate where you stood very firmly on the side of Jacob Zuma is what we need.
And was I wrong? Absolutely. You were talking about Fred Khumalo, admitting that he was wrong about the IOL thing. Yes, I'm admitting I was wrong there.
I remember saying a populist president is not what we need, and that we're going to miss Thabo Mbeki. We're actually going to miss Thabo Mbeki, because under Thabo Mbeki we had some growth there, Anthea.
I was just thinking, in Thabo's defense, he had Trevor Manuel as his finance minister, and by far this country's best finance minister in my lifetime anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was in a conversation about a week and a half ago with the former IRR chief something, and he told me an astounding statistic that under Thabo Mbeki there was a time when we were building 10 RDP houses for every one shack that was standing.
Wow.
What?
That was something to be proud of.
Yeah. And by the way, here's one more thing about the ANC, is that the most likeliest outcome of their Congress in the annual Congress is that Cyril is going to be president again of the ANC. It's been pronounced by the only province that's holding out is the Northwest and Eastern Cape. Everyone else is on the bandwagon of him going for a second term.
There's so much shit going on in this country. One of the things that we completely missed yesterday is what is happening in Bloemfontein there with Ace Magashule's.
Well,
no.
What is happening with Ace Magashule's case out there in Bloemfontein, guys?
It's falling apart because the major witness was a girl from Valcom, actually, who was his PA. This girl was given a bursary of some kind by the government to go study in America. And so when she's being trotted out by the government as the leading witness in this case, suddenly Ace Magashule's lawyers are her lawyers. Suddenly, after a couple of months, she doesn't want to testify anymore. And then she can't be found in this America because now nobody can get a hold of her. No one in Valcom, none of her friends, anyone. She's literally just gone off the face of the planet. And so now the NPA is in the 70 charges were going to be confirmed by this lady. And now she's not there anymore. So now they're only left with 3 charges.
Jeez. What a mess.
3.
That's how Ace operates. Ace is always 2 steps removed from anything. And so the one person who can always confirm him, most of them are dead or are on his side firmly. And so Ace Magashule is a gangster. Never forget that, right? He never forget that piece of information that he from Paris, he's feared. And he's feared for a reason. He's always 2 steps detached from anything that makes his hands dirty. So whenever you think they have him, laugh a little bit because they don't have him.
One of the things I wish we would see with the NPA is a little bit of innovative thinking. And I just, kind of think back to Rudy Giuliani as the district attorney in New York, and one of his biggest cases actually that made him was against gangsters, mob bosses, and what they did, what he and his legal team, because that's what the district attorney is in the States. It's the equivalent of what our NPA head,
our prosecutors,
is here, and they went to a university professor, a law professor, and kind of worked with him to say, how do we get these guys? Because one of the things we do know about the mob is as you say, Ace is the mob, right? Is one removed from everything, and they specifically worked out a strategy, a legal strategy, to be able to get these guys. And that's how they did it. And they dismantled the stranglehold of the mob. So
it's like,
I wish they would do that too.
if you're dealing with gangsters, I mean, how did they get Al Capone? It was tax evasion. It was a
It
small
wasn't. It wasn't murder. It wasn't any of the big things that you kind of,
But
So
Anthea, this is interesting because, and I see you smiling there. Like the one department that seems to be still functioning better than any other is the department under your friend, your former colleague, and someone who you've spoken to many times, Edward Kisvetter. SARS seems to know what they're doing. SARS could go after Ace if they had the will, and they could easily put him in jail. God knows they put away people for tax evasion and call them in for meetings at the drop of a hat. They're looking for tax money anyway, right?
Sure. So I saw Edward sitting in not Parliament yesterday, very proud of himself because he got a mention that SARS was doing particularly well on the collection. But I do know Edward, and I know that he's incredibly busy just chasing down tax evasion. Now, whether it's the Ace Magashules or the tobacco companies or, smaller mining companies or whatever the case may be, you do make a good point that perhaps that could be the route to go, and I don't see why not. You make such a good point. You don't have to get him on massive corruption charges. You just have to get him on something, right?
Yeah, precisely. And they've got to know some of that. They tried to get him on that Pirniev painting, but it turned out that wasn't his fault. It was the one thing he was not guilty of. And again, many people, including me, had to issue apologies for that. But Leeto, you really are in the center of the storm there. And I know that the Free State is the center of the country, but look how much news is going on in your little province at the moment.
Yes, because my little province has both the potential to be something great and has way too many idiots in power to be great. And so that's the problem. And with the ANC situation, this province was to make or break Cyril's contention for the next round to his election. And so he had all of his people in line, Godongwana, who he was literally paying a salary to for like 2 years when he was suspended by ACE. And so all of these people were coming into the convergence of ACE. And so now everyone is now is suddenly worshipping at the temple of Cyril. And the people here, their backbones could be bananas for all we care. Because if you're gonna give them anything, Gareth, if you're about to run and you are promising them jobs, you would probably be in contention for president of the ANC right now. And so that's the problem. People are so poor in this province. If you throw a little money at them, they could literally just back you. Godongwana is giving his backing to Cyril because Cyril was giving him 10,000 rand a month when he was suspended.
What do you think? What do you think Cyril's 1 billion rand campaign funding was all about?
Yeah,
for the internal campaigning, by the way. It wasn't spent on a national campaign, it was spent on an internal campaign. One of the things we're not talking about that is in very little media is the killing fields that KZN and the Eastern Cape branches have become once again. It's almost like back to the 90s, like an unidentified man opens fire, 3 people dead in Mpumalanga, in a branch meeting happening in, it's a branch meeting that's happening somewhere.
And the worst part for me is this stuff doesn't even make the news anymore. Like nobody's even interested. You hear about these faction fights in the ANC. It's outrageous what's going on. Even in Mpumalanga, we stopped talking about long ago. Remember when Ndaweni Mahlangu was in charge there, and there was all that stuff going on.
Guys, and
that was a long time ago.
And what that does is it unfortunately takes away the credibility of what mainstream media is, because then it kind of makes you think, are they really Tuma minions, as everybody is calling them? Are they suppressing this information because it's not good for Cyril, or are they really not interested in this type of reporting? Right? So you're just like, is that who they are? Is that what it's about? And then when you hear ENCA is in another round of retrenchments, you kind of
just laid off like 80 people, ENCA. So tell me what's going on in the media. I mean, that's an interesting discussion.
because all that does is it stretches the newsroom even further. So you've got even less people having to turn around the news cycle in an even faster time. Therefore, they really don't have the time to chase down the stories. And also because accountants, they always get rid of the top, of the top earners who happen to be the most experienced because they've been there so long. That's why they earn what they earn. And you're left with kids. Who are not like Bakh'abantu, who I don't know that I should finish the task before I leave.
Yeah, but come on, give the guy a break. It's only his first week in the job, like it's only our finance minister's first time at the podium delivering the budget. So, Anthea, before we let you go, because I know Leeto wants to go on to something completely political, but is there anything else you want to throw in about the general state of markets? I mean, where are people who want to hold on? Forget about growing your money, because that's like a pipe dream for many people at the moment. They don't have any. But if you have a little bit of money, what do you want to put that into where it is as far out of the reaches of really terrible politicians as possible, and where you know that you've at least got enough to compete with inflation so that when you get old, you won't end up eating dog food? Let's be realistic for a second.
Sure. So our budget, which was very light on detail yesterday, was actually very well received by the market. And so the rand strengthened. When I last saw it just around market close, it was below 15. Okay, just below 14.99. So that was a good thing. And so it was a good response. People liked it, except I don't think the budget was good enough for the credit rating agencies to upgrade us. They might put us onto stable from negative outlook. And so the outlook for markets in South Africa, unfortunately, I think is still pedestrian, to say the least. And now that the rand is a bit stronger, we really must think about sending money offshore. Now, I know this is a very hard one to do because it costs money to do the exchange rate, to apply to SARS, to get an offshore account, to invest offshore, right? It takes, I would say, probably 400,000 rand just to make it worth your while, and not everybody has 500,000 rand lying around that they can invest.
That's not coming from saving your 350 for 9 months.
There you go, right? But if you're going to, and the other thing the finance minister didn't do was talk about these tax-free savings accounts, right? So in previous years, they've implemented it. They've upped the amount that you're allowed, which is now 36,000 rand per annum, to a maximum of 500,000 rand over a lifetime. And if the government is going to give you a tax break, take it. So I would say those two things is where you're looking at the moment. We're very heavily focused on thematic offshore investments at the moment, kind of, healthcare. Tech has taken a bit of a beating, but we do like the green economy and still a little bit of tech going forward. So that's where we're looking to invest. South Africa is very difficult. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't be buying government bonds. I don't think that the South African government is going to default anytime soon. And if you're looking at the 10-year government bond, you're getting probably 9.75, 9.8 at the moment % per annum return. And that's not terrible in a market where yields are very low. And I think we might actually benefit from the fact that our government is paying so much for its debt, because foreign investors will come to South Africa looking for this yield and hopefully keep our currency strong. So maybe there was some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's not a train coming at us. Are we sure it's not a train? Are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure?
Hey,
maybe a different rail.
We do not, Anthea, we do not sugarcoat things on the Burning platform. But thank you very much, Anthea Gardner. Always good to see you. And I know everybody loved seeing you again. Thanks for your analysis of the budget, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you very much. Great to see you guys. Bye.
Awesome stuff. So, Leeto, I know there's something on your agenda which is going to get everybody talking, and this is something you specifically put into the menu for today. The commodification. Ooh, listen. So this is the commodification of white fear and black historic pain. And I have a feeling that this is something which you're going to be able to unpack for us probably better than most. And I know that we're being duped by the politicians. I know that they're using this against us. But explain to me why it's something that you felt needed to be brought up this morning, and what the value of this is for politicians.
it has immense value, right? So let's look at the two sides. So what brought the idea to my mind was watching the AfriForum versus Julius Malema thing. And I don't care about the theatrics of who sat where and did what and said what. But what these two sides were holding was something very important when I looked at the debate was it's this expression of white fear, right? Where especially the white people who aren't really in contact with black people on a daily basis, who would buy more and more into that idea that as a white person, I should be in fear for myself because at any moment the blacks could turn on me and eat me, right? And then on the other side, it's this expression of black pain and the exploitation of that pain for political gains. And Julius Malema does it very, very well, right? So let's start with that. So Julius Malema begins from this place where he, one, has now become the sole expresser of black pain in the political space, right? Not even the PAC does it as well as he does. They were the monopoly on expressing black pain before. And now he is, right? He's even better at it than the ANC because what the ANC are doing now, they're just exploiting black pain, right? They're saying, remember, you could just fall back into apartheid without us. But what he does is he rehashes what the pain comes from in history, right? But the way in which he packages it is very, very unique and very special. We must look at it very carefully because he doesn't thrust it towards anger like everyone expects him to do. People think he thrusts it towards anger, but what he does is he expresses it and expresses the discontent and then says, I am the only person who can make you content from your black pain. He alleviates it and says, don't be angry. We won't be angry. We won't retaliate. And he even says this to that effect to the lawyer.
Things change.
Yes. No. He says, it's not even unless things change. He says, unless we change things, right? He's very careful about that verbiage. He says, unless the EFF comes in and changes things, the blacks could revolt. The blacks could want revenge, and the blacks could want to come eat you alive. And he even says, these very blacks will even come eat me alive if I don't serve them the justice that they deserve. And so he becomes this person who paints himself as the only one who understands, but on the other side can express it effectively. And I think that's very important because I think black pain.
Sorry, I just want to throw in, I think there's also a bit of savior complex going on here because he realizes that if he puts himself at the center of this, then he can benefit on one hand from the amount of attention, which he gets outsized attention. I was talking to people just last night at dinner about how this guy maybe at a push gets 10% of the people in this country moving. You know, he can activate maybe 10% of the population, but he gets enormous attention. The media are obsessed with him, and what you're saying, Leeto, that he's positioned himself in such a way that he's important to both his perceived enemies and his perceived friends, and even the people who don't care about him.
Exactly.
What fascinates me, about Julius Malema and the EFF then, is that a lot of people recognize that about the way that they're positioning themselves. So when I have a fight with my employer, I will contact the EFF. They're coming up with, you know what I'm saying? And they kind of jump on those things. They jump on those things, whether it is a small fight in a click store because of shampoo, was it shampoo or conditioner? I don't remember, or it's kind of and that's one of the judgments against them was if they want to be a union and represent workers in disputes in the workplace, then they must register themselves as such, right? That was one of the judgments against them. But those same people are not showing up as much for them in the polls, which is why they kind of are still hovering around the 10%, plateaued essentially, as it were. Their rate of growth is not as high as it was at the very beginning when they started. So there is also that playing up. We often think that citizens and the electorate can easily be fooled by all these theatrics of the politicians. But I think that they know how to use what they need at the time of need.
No, but I think Julius actually counts on that. He counts on the little people supporting him, right? Because he can then create a sort of mystery of the zeitgeist to say, it's me and these few 10% who understand, right? It's me and these few 10% who are willing to act. And so the rest of you aren't willing to act on your pain because you're afraid, because you're too close to the master, because you are in, as he names it, a class betrayal, right? That's what he says. We betrayed the lower classes, right? And so that for him is if Julius right now becomes the major opposition, I think he's going to lose a whole lot more of this luster for the action of revolution, because at that point more and more people are buying in, and the question then is who does Julius become as a person on the precipice, right? He now knows he's far enough to spew whatever he wants to spew, and we won't really hold him that much to account for it because we're still saying he's the small party, and he counts on that.
Julius is what in the heat of the anti-apartheid movement and kind of like the small running battles that existed is what they call a paper tiger. Want to remind you all, Julius is 40 years old, 40 years old. So Julius comes from Seshego, guys. Have any of you heard of a major confrontation in Seshego with the police? You know, all of the heat of the 80s and the tear gases and the shootings in the streets were happening in townships like Khayelitsha, Langa, Soweto, KwaMashu. Kwamakhuta. Have any of y'all heard of any of that shit happening in Seshego? I would bet you that if there was tear gas in the streets, Julius Malema would be found shivering in the fetal position in a corner.
Right. And so I think also that the most crucial part is that all of this, right, even with the white fear, that white people who are in contact with Black people on a daily basis, if you work with Black people in the workplace, you now know that I'm not about to be eaten at any second, because when you're with Black people, they tell you, oh yeah, I've been mugged like 10 times already. They hijacked me, they took my car. And so you understand that crime is crime in this country. But then the fear is very good. Like if you come to places in the Free State, there are white people who last met a Black person, except for the person who works on their farm, who last met a Black person 10 years ago, who they can have a conversation with. And so we get sort of debased into these extremes that get exploited for one on the one side of this white fear, which is money and donations. On the other side is political capital for people who try to express Black pain, right? And so those two places, I think, like always, would be negated by the center. All the normal South Africans who meet and clash against each other. If I have an argument with Gareth right now, I wouldn't go and say, just like the people who do Gareth dirty on Twitter, if he has an argument with a Black person, racist, right? But if we have an argument now, we understand that we're trying to reconcile a position. Maybe you hold a certain position, I hold one. And the argument is what is going to reconcile the two positions that might be extreme to something more moderate, right? We don't go to calling each other racist in the normal spaces that we occupy. And I think when we think about it, every time you think that something is too extreme, find your opposite. Talk, because conversations in this country, I think, don't happen enough and don't happen as honestly as we think they should. And these extremes are starting, and there's such great TV though, these extremes. You look at Julius on the stand giving his speech about how you are settlers, you came here, we're not neighbors, we're this, we're that. And you start to think that is South Africa, right? Yeah. And it isn't. Julius and AfriForum are definitely not South Africa.
But Leeto, I was watching some of that, and what I found really interesting too was this is one of the few occasions where politicians, and this goes for all politicians, but especially those ones who use rhetoric and who never really account for themselves. They're never forced to actually explain their position on anything. I mean, when Julius is put in a position where he has to explain what he means by something like kiss the Boer or kill the Boer or whatever, he finds himself very... He's almost incapable of actually defining, of sticking to and explaining his his very deeply held beliefs and values. I don't think he has any. Like a lot of politicians,
Julius Malema.
he will go whichever way the wind blows. And when he's forced in a court of law to account for himself, and this is the case for many politicians, it's just nice to see it happening to Julius because he's got a big mouth. When we see this happening, we suddenly see how shallow these people really are.
No, because they're never forced to explain. If you're a politician in South Africa, you're never forced to explain.
Well, the media never ask follow-up questions.
You remember I showed you the picture of our mayor, the one where he's standing with guns, with people standing in front of him, and he's standing with two gunmen behind him, right? That's the literal picture of what South Africa is. You go to a small town, you say, hey, comrades, we're going to win. We're going to give you jobs. And they say, yay. And nobody ever says, how are you going to give us jobs? If I'm in Valcom, how are you going to create jobs? There are no mines anymore. What are you saying, right? And so whenever a politician in South Africa is asked questions, it gets very tough, right? Because you then have to explain what this position of that you sort of fell into. Most politicians fall into these positions and then have to build up this rhetoric after they're in the position, right? And so that's the problem. You now have to explain your facade, right? Why do you say these things? And so then they start to flounder. And like our former president said, they meander around what the facts are.
But Julius is also an agent provocateur, guys. Mm-hmm. You know, he is the classic. And if like somebody came like 5 years, 10 years from now, whatever, somebody came to say Julius had always been a spy. You know, he's always been paid to do this kind of work. I totally will buy that conspiracy theory. The man, on one day he stands for this, 2 weeks down the line, he stands for exactly the opposite of that. And at any time. But also he has all of those landmarks, you know, all of those hallmarks. He likes fancy clothes and fancy watches. He is totally the kind of person that you could buy to be an agent of chaos. He is totally the kind of person you would buy to be an agent.
He was already bought. Ask Thabo. He was already bought to be an agent of chaos. Ask Thabo Mbeki. You remember what he was for Jacob Zuma. He was the ultimate pit bull. He ripped Thabo Mbeki and his allies to shreds because he was bought. A brown envelope was given.
He was also instrumental in bringing about the fall of Thabo Mbeki, and in no small part, Julius Malema made his name during that time.
Yep, that's what he did, and that is how he was bought. Most of him getting money. Remember, at the time at which he was attacking Thabo Mbeki was when he started getting fat. If you look at him, he started gaining weight around that time. That's when the brown envelope started
Is that
flowing.
what you said? Did you say getting fat?
Yeah. He started getting fat during that time.
Yes, that's right.
No, Phumi, I started getting fat. I didn't always look like this. I was a skinny guy with a six-pack. I started gaining weight when I had a job, when I started getting money. And Julius, like any other poor child in this country, starts gaining weight when he's got money. So where did he get money? Brown envelope. And where did he get what does the money result in when you're poor? In the first year, 2 years, it results in fat. That's why I go to the gym now.
Right. I'm afraid that on that very controversial...
Wait, I have to ask one question. Because there's somebody on the comments here. G-Star on the comments was suggesting that I need to read something called People War. And I'm wondering if maybe it was a trigger error and you are talking about the Maoist strategy called People's War. And I just want to make sure that, just let me know if that's what you're talking about. G-Star, People War, you say. Is it People War, People's War? You literally have 30 seconds to get it right. Because if it is People's War, then they've done that.
Okay. Yeah. So let's, just the final message is that we are South Africa. They're not. There are people who benefit from our degrees of separation. Whenever you think you are better than somebody else or you are worse off than somebody else because of who they are, there's somebody who will try to benefit of that, especially these half-brained politicians that we have. So try your best to moderate your views, meet other people, talk to those people, debate them, hear their views, and this country would be much better for it.
But Leeto, most people are those people, and most people like to have conversations like we're having this morning. And they're not fighting. We're not at each other's throats like AfriForum and Julius Malema are. And I agree with you. Like, let's stop using the things that we've all been through as a nation, and particularly our racial memory, our fear, our guilt, our issues of victimization and all the rest of it. Let's stop using those things as fuel for division, and let's use it as a way to get things together and to start things moving. Because, my God, we're not going to go anywhere forward if we're constantly looking back. Very nice to have you on, man. Always good to see you. Thank you, Leeto.
Thank you for having me. Great day, everyone.
Sis Phumi, we will see you next week.
Next week. And I'll be in front of the blue wall, hopefully, in my own damn house.
Magic. Don't work too hard there, Pums. And we will see you tomorrow morning on cliffcentral.com. Have an excellent Thursday. Cheers, everybody.